Well, good evening and welcome to another exciting episode of Love Not Fear. I'm Jack Cox, author of Love Not Fear. And I'm with my gorgeous co-host, Annie Day, author of
Orgasmic Health and Your Guide to Feeling Fabulous Fast.
Wonderful. And I'll put a link to all those books, those 3 books below in the description. Now, tonight, we've got a very special presentation by Annie. She's gone to a lot of trouble to prepare this on fairy folk.
Indeed.
So take it away, Annie.
Okay, so I've been very honest and authentic about the fact that I am an incarnated fairy, a merfairy, in fact. So some of the things I'm going to talk to you about are things that are part of me, basically. So I know that the reason that fairies can fly is because they don't take themselves too seriously. And what I'm infamous for is for even in the most dire, difficult circumstances, I can always find, something to laugh about. And I think that's really, that's part of the fairies and elementals energy, that they help to raise our vibration with very positive energies. And they love being in nature.
Yeah.
So they're also very concerned that we look after, that we, wherever I go, I pick up litter. Yeah. And I put it in the bins and I collect. I've quite often got black bin liners in my bag. So when I go out anywhere in nature, I'll collect beer bottles and cans and wrappers and all sorts of things. Because one of the things that I feel honours our earth, but also that the fairies really enjoy, is that we look after our beautiful earth, basically. And they love people who are joyful, and they love people who are light on their feet and, do as little damage to the land as possible. So for many, many years now, my lovely chiropractor has told me off, because quite often I manage to tear my Achilles tendon because I run on my tiptoes. Oh. And I think that it's because as a child I didn't want to squash the grass or the daisies that was running on, and many moons on, I'm still find myself running on my tiptoes, especially in my lovely barefoot shoes. So I have to really kind of say to myself, I need to put my feet flat on the floor. So some of the things that fairies do are doing just that, really, that we're very light on our feet. And we want to, we appreciate that every blade of grass has a beautiful vibration and life force. So fairies are throughout the earth that we live on. Every single country has stories about fairies, and they're all similar illustrations, and they're all given similar qualities in every single country. So all through time, and on account of their work in the fields, farmers have claimed to know fairies or have seen them frequently because they are working on the land. And these amazing creatures are found all the way from America to Japan, to the Far East and down to Australia. Fairy folk, or fae as they're sometimes called, or Siddhi, take on many names and shapes. And I wanted to kind of take us on a little journey about that. So Ireland is the home of fairies, basically. There are so many fairy mounds, there are so many references to fairies and mermaids, particularly in Ireland, where they really honour the fairy folk. And I was very blessed a few years ago to go to Dingle, and the whole of Dingle is just fairyland personified. All the houses are painted different colours, and everybody's got a story to tell about fairies.
Dingle is very, very special. I love Dingle. It's one of my favourite parts, one of my favourite places.
It's gorgeous, isn't it, Jack? And I think, like Glastonbury, really, and lots of other sacred sites, the veil between the physical and the spiritual world is a very thin veil there in Dingle, isn't it? You know, it really is. And so many, you know, like we say in Glastonbury, this is normal for Glastonbury, because so many synchronicities happen, don't they, that are just inexplicable. But similarly in Dingle as well, the tourist information, there was a book with people's, you know, beautiful things that have happened whilst they've been in Dingle.
Glastonbury is another wonderful place for fairies. I feel them. There's a particular pond on a friend's land, which I go to occasionally. And I really feel the fairies there. I feel the energy. I don't see fairies, but I can really feel the energy there.
Yeah, it's really tangible.
If I go there at dusk, or dawn, but I'm not normally up in time to go there for dawn. Go there at dusk, you can really feel the energies there.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things I wanted to talk about, you know, the Irish do have a complete love of fairies. So this was a news report going back some years. A sacred fairy bush in County Clare will not, after all, have to be destroyed in the building of a new bypass motorway, much to the release of those who attach beliefs to such features of the Irish landscape. There had been a warning from a folklorist of a curse on the new roadway and of motoring fatalities if the fairy bush was to fall victim to the 100 million plan to bypass Newmarket on Fergus and Ennis. One of the state's best known folklorists and storytellers, Eddie Lenihan, had warned that the destruction of the fairy thorn bush, or skeech as it was called at Latoon outside Newmarket on Fergus, to facilitate the bypass plans could result in misfortune and in some cases death for those travelling the proposed new road. So basically, the council in their infinite wisdom very wisely decided that they would go right round the fairy bush and they wouldn't take it down after all. And there are lots of other stories as well globally, in Japanese culture, where they won't cut down, you know, or cut down a tree, or they won't cut down a sacred space that they know that the fairy and elementals are seen in, basically. So
going back to Ireland, have you heard what happened at I'm going back, what, 10 years now, 15 years maybe, when they built the M1 past Tower Hill? Because a lot of people were worried about that.
Yeah.
But they went ahead and did it, didn't they?
Yeah. But actually, if you've been to Tara, it hasn't affected the energy. But I think because the fairies and elementals would have intervened to make sure that it did not change the beautiful energy of it, basically.
I've not been back since the motorway. I went before the motorway was built.
So, yeah, I love the Irish that they're going, no, this is a fairy sacred site and we shouldn't be doing this. So it is said that every time a child says, I don't believe in fairies, a little fairy somewhere dies. I don't know if that's the case, but I think the more of us that do engage with fairy and elemental energies, the better it is for the whole of our earth. So what are fairies? They are elemental creatures that exist throughout the world in various forms and should be properly called fae folk. I was going to wear my fairy and elf in ears tonight, but they refused to stick on. So that's what I was going to do.
Oh, Annie.
I know, I did try, and then somebody said you need to put them in hot water and get them out and mould them. But yeah, I just decided I wouldn't go with that. So here are the different types of fae. Asrays, which are flower fairies, delicate female fairies. Brownies, traditionally attached to humans and their households. They are friendly and helpful. So you can call in brownies if you want help with housework or you want to do decorating of your home, and they will come to your aid. Again, like angels, if we don't call them in, they cannot break our free will. So if you want some help from fairies with your love life, with healthy conditions, with prosperity and abundance, whatever it is that you're manifesting, then you need to ask for them to give you a hand, because the only reason they're not helping you is they will not break your free will, because that's not what they're allowed to do, much like angels. Dwarfs, elves and gnomes are earth elementals, and they are great for help with the gardens. So Jack and I used to do an allotment in Stafford, and the day that I went there and dug it all over for the first time, I must have been there for 4 hours. People came and looked what I'd achieved in 4 hours, and that I planted so many things. And people were laughing at me saying, don't be daft, of course the fairies didn't help you. And then the man who's got the plot opposite us said, actually, I've seen fairies, and I've seen that she calls in fairies and they do what she says. How else could she have done all of this on her own in 4 hours? Because it wasn't just humanly possible for me to do that. So I know that I did call in the goblins and the fairies to help me to do this, because it would be something they would be interested in. You know, growing vegetables and growing things in the land would be something good. Goblins are fairies that live underground, but again, they can help us with, you know, any gardening projects, any building projects. Leprechauns are fond of gold and are tricky and are known to be tricksters, but they make us laugh, so they're all good. Mermaids are water creatures, and as I've said earlier, I'm a merfairy, so I'm equally at home with trees and nature as I am in the oceans and rivers as well. Pixies are often said to be mischievous beings who enjoy practical jokes on humans. And I know that some of my friends that really engage with pixies actually prefer animals to humans. So they're not that, you know, they're not that fond of humans for reasons that we probably don't need to go into.
I know the feeling well. I only allow very, very few humans into my circle.
I'm very blessed that I am one of them, Jack.
I'm very blessed that you want to be there.
Siddi are subterranean dwellers, so they live at the bottom of the ocean, but they're much like mermaids in that they clean up the ocean and they really look after the coral. Coral is like the tree of the ocean, basically. So they really make sure that the living creatures in the ocean are all taken care of. Trolls are said not to like daylight. So quite often there's stories about trolls, so that they live under bridges and they don't really like to be seen by humans. But again, you can call them in for any construction. And I've got a friend who works on the motorway, who calls them in quite frequently when he's having trouble with digging ditches or doing stuff like that. So you just need to know which one to call on, really.
We spoke last week, didn't we, and suggested that at least some of the trolls may be Sasquatch.
Yeah, maybe. And giants, which is beautifully synchronistic with what we talked about last week, wasn't it?
It is, yeah. All ties in together.
Absolutely. And then water fairies, who are said to be unpredictable.
Undines.
Yeah. So they like rivers. They do prefer fresh water, whereas mermaids prefer salty water and oceans and beaches. Whereas water fairies like rivers and waterfalls and things like that. The highest waterfall in the UK, or at least the highest drop waterfall in the UK, is at Pistyll, Rhaeadr. And I know that every time I've gone there, I can really feel the water fairies' energy. As you walk up the waterfall, you can feel more and more of their presence. So, you know, they love waterfalls.
Where is that, Annie?
That's in Wales. I can't tell you whereabouts, but yeah, Pistyll. So it's spelt. This might be right. It might not be.
We'll see if we can find out, and we'll put it in the description.
Yeah, it's Pystyll, and then Rhaeadr is Rhaeder, but it's the highest drop, or the longest drop, I should say, in the UK. But it's wonderful because you can walk alongside the waterfall, which is lovely because we get all that lovely high vibrational water energy. So is it possible to establish contact with the fairies? It so is. So Jack knows already, as do many people who visited Heaven Sent Bliss, that I have a fairy garden.
A beautiful fairy garden. I can't describe. Honestly, I can't describe, folks, the energy in Annie's garden. It is. It's in the middle of Stafford. It's just like, well, it's just like being back in Glastonbury. It really is. It's just magical.
Oh, thank you, Jack. Oh, we've just had a message from Andrew. Pistyll. Oops, I've lost it again.
Feel free to unmute yourself,
is a
Andrew.
waterfall 4 miles from the village of Llanfair in Mocha in Powys, Wales, and is 16 miles west of Oswestry. Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you. Andrew, anytime you want to comment, feel free to unmute yourself.
I just didn't want to say Llanhedrych.
Well, I'm not saying it.
I thought I did pretty good with Pistyll Rider, when it's probably, the Welsh people are probably going, oh, that's not how you pronounce it. But anyway, but it is lovely. It is absolutely exquisitely lovely. And there are lots of water fairies there. So is it possible to establish contact or see fairies? It so is. It is more than possible. As a matter of fact, nature, together with our pressing need to protect, it is the ideal starting point for a relationship with fairies and our personal guardian fairies. And again, as I said earlier, as soon as we call them in, they're there straight away, quick as a flash. And I've called them in for a whole host of things over the years since I was a little child, and I realised that if I asked them to help me, then I got it quicker than if I just asked for it, basically.
Brilliant, yeah.
If we keep a garden of any sort, it is because we appreciate all living things and wish to communicate with them at some level. We admire and care for our plants, including big trees where tree spirits dwell. And the old saying says that fairy folks live in old oak trees. What do you think of that, Jack Cox?
Well, we found them really, really strongly in the Yews, didn't we, when we went for a walk
absolutely.
A couple of months back.
Yeah, we so did, didn't we? But that whole area was replete with fairy and elemental and tree spirits and dryads, and it was tangible, wasn't it, Jack? So they love places like that. So
would you say that dryads were a type of fairy?
They certainly belong to the elementals, don't they? And then again, because they've got their branches in the heavens and their roots very firmly in the soil. So I think they help us to keep that heaven and earth connection for sure. So yes, I would say that they're part of the fairies and elementals.
I've always had a very special relationship with dryads.
Yeah, they just love us, don't they?
Well, they do if we love them.
Yeah, well, that's it, isn't it, really? That they love people who are respectful of their energies and protect them. So
I think any of the fae folk, if you're respectful, then you'll get on well with them.
Yeah.
But if you go in all full of hate and destruction, then you're going to get a backlash.
Yeah, absolutely. going back many moons ago, I was visiting a 1,000-year-old yew tree in St Michael's churchyard in Penkridge, and a man was there with his chainsaw just cutting off all the branches of the tree. I felt physically sick, and he wouldn't stop doing it. He said, well, it's rubbing against that headstone. I said, well, first of all, it's from 1803. And the other thing is, this is a sentient being, and that isn't. So he carried on with his chainsaw. So I ran into the church, and I was very friendly with the reverend there, and said, Jeffrey, you need to come quickly. There's a man cutting down Eloin. Because by then we'd had lots of talks about why I visited this tree, and I encouraged him to come inside it and have a hug from Eloin because he's been pollarded. And Jeffrey came out and went, she's right, you're wrong, take your chainsaw home, you're not welcome here.
Brilliant.
So I was like, yes, fantastic. So
Brilliant.
yeah, they love it when we protect them. They love it that we protect them.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, squirrels. We've talked about squirrels in the past, haven't we? They do love old trees, basically. Fairies love trees. Wherever there's trees, there's going to be nature spirits, isn't there? Because they just love that dappled, green, beautiful, scrumptious, heart-healing energy.
Well, that's the bit I love too.
Yeah, it's just, well, I think you're probably an elemental, Jack, aren't you?
I think I probably am, yeah. I certainly have a very close relationship with them.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So the fairy folk enjoy the company of squirrels, and I think it's because they're very playful, and you know, we've talked about the squirrels in my garden. They're very acrobatic and they're really naughty. They've stolen all the plums off my tree. So it's currently 30 plums to the squirrels, none to Annie's. Squirrels seem to be the favourite body for prankster-prone, mischievous fairies. According to Fae tradition, fairies absolutely love squirrels and cats. So their cats are a favourite, you know, embodiment as well. And this weekend, the Airbnb that we stayed at had got 2 little ginger kittens, and just that purring sound is so healing, isn't it? But yeah, they were really naughty. They were running up the curtains. They were destroying all sorts of things that you weren't supposed to destroy, and they left the cat scratching post, which was beautiful, alone. So we're just scratching everything else instead.
I know we're not really talking about sound healing, but you've mentioned it.
Yeah.
There's something else apart from cat purring, which is really on the right frequency.
Yeah.
For healing, and that's the vibration of bees.
Yeah, without a doubt. It's that 432 hertz humming sound again, isn't it? That's so good for our hearts, isn't it? Yeah, it is just beautiful. And obviously bird song, there's a lot of sound resonance with birds as well, isn't there?
Oh yeah.
So fairies are believed to exist and live everywhere. We like to think of them as attractive beings with gossamer wings, holding parties in our garden or elsewhere, busy working and making sure all our plants grow by pushing the roots and growing seeds. To be able to think that our garden fairies are beautiful and generous, as well as understanding companion, is most comforting, even if you cannot see them yet. As you said earlier, you can feel the energy, can't you, of them? You know, it's a clairsentient level.
Not everybody can. I mean, you and I feel it very strongly. Going back to what you were saying earlier, Annie, about children.
Yeah.
I think it's natural for children to see all these things. Parents have a huge responsibility, because as soon as they start saying, don't be so silly, there's nothing there, it's in your imagination, the children stop seeing it.
Yeah.
Now, when I was married and had a daughter, We never ever did that.
Yeah.
We always took an active interest in all the things she saw, even if we couldn't see them as well.
Yeah.
And as a result of that, she didn't lose the gift.
Yeah. I was very blessed that I spent a lot of time with my grandparents, and I would tell them that I could see fairies and I could see elves, and they never once said, no, you can't see them. And it was only when I went to school, Birmingham school, they came from Wigan, Ince, just outside of Wigan in Lancashire. And so I went to a Birmingham school talking about fairies and elementals and trees and talking like, well, Luke in the coot boot, which really did not make me very popular. I was a very strange creature. So, yeah, people are scared of what they don't understand, don't they? So,
talking about Birmingham and the Black Country and all around there, there's a story about one of the churches in Walsall. I don't know whether you've heard of it. That when they laid the foundations, this is the story, I'm not saying it's true or false. When they laid the foundations and left them overnight, the next day the fairies had moved the foundations.
Wow.
To where they wanted the church built.
Yeah.
And they went ahead and built the church where the fairies put it.
Yeah.
And they left the sacred space that the fairies didn't want disturbed alone.
Yeah.
Beautiful story.
Yeah, and again in Wales, in Snowdonia, there's some standing stones that I don't know why National Trust decided they were going to move them. They moved them, and a week later they were back exactly where they were before.
Yeah.
And they reckoned, that it was humans and they were vandals. I'm not so sure it was vandals. I think it was just the Fae going, this is where this circle needs to be. There's a really good reason why it needs to be at this place, not a bit further up the hill to be convenient for humans.
Yeah. Yeah.
That makes sense, doesn't it?
Makes sense to me, Annie.
So their accepted connection to Earth and dislike for all things that are ugly and destructive fascinators. It's also said that they like to be recognised as part of our gardens, having statues and wind chimes and, anything that represents fairies as well, they're going to be really attracted to, aren't they? So any statues or any things like that are going to be really good. When we do things like that, by doing so, we also get an overall feeling of accomplishment, order, additionally, a charming reminder of their existence. So if fairies do live in the garden, where is their favourite spot? To the Victorians, it was the bottom of the garden, but in the language of the time, that simply meant semi-wild areas that could be easily found in the urban or private gardens of that time. If we are lucky and look carefully around our own gardens, we are likely to find that space, the bottom of the garden, that is an abandoned spot. Maybe we've not been able to tidy, and it's undisturbed but full of wild, beautiful plants. But this is exactly where the wonderful mystery lies and where fairies would prefer to live.
That's where they like places not spoilt by the hand of human beings.
Yeah, they don't want it over cultivated, do they?
Yeah.
So how are you going to see these fairies? So one of the things I recommend is that they do love human beings. Most of the fairies do anyway, and elementals. So if you look very carefully face on, it's unlikely that you'll see them. Do you remember those seeing eye pictures a few years ago where there'd be loads of bricks, and then when you softened your gaze and looked beyond it, you could see the dolphin jumping out or the heart jumping out or whatever it is? Seeing fairies is much like that, and I know because I am able to see them, which I feel very blessed for. if you soften your gaze, quite often I see them peripherally. If you look straight on, then we're using what shall I say, we're using a different part of our brain, but peripherally, and again, softening our gaze means that we can see them more easily.
I think the same thing applies to seeing auras too, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
It's the best way to see auras.
It's the same process, isn't it, really?
Yeah.
That trying to look straight on, that's not how the rods and cones in our eyes work, really. They need to have some softening of that energy. So the times that are said to be the most easiest to see fairies and elementals is on Midsummer's Night, June the 21st, for obvious reasons. Shakespeare knew what he was up to, didn't he, really?
He knew what he was talking about, yeah.
He certainly did.
He knew more than he let on.
Oh, I'm absolutely certain of it, darling. Absolutely certain. The fairies are able to use human tongues and even 12 flowers bloom in their honour all at once in the famous fairy rings, or circular collections of mushrooms or violets where the fairies spend their time. Traditionally in Italy, on the 12th night, which is January the 6th, the fairies come into homes and leave sweets for children who everyone say never fail to see them because of their innocence and their open minds, which is exactly what we've just been saying, isn't it? During Victorian times, around May Day, women would bake sweet cakes and place them in the garden near where thyme grows. Thyme is quite handy, and any biscuit placed for that purpose would certainly please the roaming birds, and that will please the fairies very much. Because again, the fairies want us to look after bees, butterflies and birds, don't they? Because they're part of our lovely earth. So if you want to encourage fairies, leave out milk and honey for them as they love it. Fairies do not like iron, so don't leave any nails or anything metal around in your garden. So it's really important that there's nothing like that in your space, because it's like kryptonite for fairies, basically, iron is. Yeah,
if you've got iron in your pocket, you're not going to see fairies.
No, absolutely, darling.
I don't want to know, but they'll keep away from you.
How can we please the fairies that come into our garden? Well, we've talked a bit about that already. We like to have fairies in our garden so we can ask them for help when things are not going the way we would want. So I call them in if I need help with my love life, with prosperity and abundance, with healthy conditions. And again, you know, it's really important that we ask for their help, because our guardian fairies cannot help us if we don't ask for their help. In most cases, they will tell us to bring in loads of ladybirds to eliminate the aphids, or hang up bird houses. They ask us to put wind chimes up because they like the sound of that. They like flutes, they like drums. So anything that's made from natural substances is going to be attractive to fairies and to elementals. Add a fairy garden space with statues of fairies and wind chimes as well would be my recommendation. Another way to please the fairies is to build a fairy house in the shape of a mound or a heap of twigs. Whether the fairies like the house or not doesn't really matter, as they are useful to voles and homeless birds. We can also beautify the area by hanging coloured ribbons or flags. We don't know anybody's garden with loads of prayer flags in, do we?
Can't think of one. Can't think of one anywhere, Annie.
It was only when I was rereading this and thought, so there was method in my loveliness. So yet they love prayer flags. They love anything that's bright and colourful. They love ribbons hung on trees. All my earrings end up with me only having one earring. Scarves fly them off or whatever. And the spare earring I hang on trees as well. So the garden's got quite a bit of crystals and loveliness on it as well.
going back to talking about Glastonbury, up on Wiriel Hill,
Yes.
it's a magical place anyway. But if you go up there, there's a special tree full of cluties.
Yeah.
And it's beautiful, you know, these coloured ribbons, the cluties.
Yeah, they're beautiful.
And it's a gorgeous place for elementals and the Fae.
Yeah, because they like pretty things like us, basically, don't they?
They
And
love
anything
it
that
there, they
moves
love
in
it
the
there.
wind, you know, that is colourful, just beautifies the natural setting that we're in, doesn't it?
They love being there, and I love being there.
Indeed, Jack. Indeed.
Did you get up to Wiriel Hill at all this trip? You just because you
No, I
just come back from
didn't. I have
Glastonbury?
previously, but not this time. No, I
No.
didn't.
No, because you've just come back from Glastonbury. How long were you there?
So we went on Friday night and we came back at lunchtime today.
Yeah, yeah.
So
A flying visit.
it was a flying visit, and I was just really pleased that we spent so much time at the Chalice Well, but also the tour and the Abbey. Just lovely, lovely, lovely areas. And I bought loads and loads of crystals and books from the Speaking Tree. I can't go to Glastonbury and not go to the Speaking Tree and buy lots of luscious esoteric books, basically.
I always come back with more crystals.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. Citrine was the crystal that I bought quite a bit of. And I know it's got so much energy in it. And again, it's a very light one. And it's very good for raising our vibration. And the lady that we stayed with, our Airbnb, gave us all a heart-shaped rose quartz as well, and put that on our pillow. That was another lovely little touch as well.
Lovely, yeah.
That's really kind. Fairies can add much to our inner and outer selves. To benefit from them, we need to open our hearts and nurture feelings of wonder and love for everything in nature. And as long as they stay in our garden, it will explode with life. Season after season, let us show our appreciation by leaving at least once a month an offering of crumbs or flowers. They will leave for us many blessings, and as we experience the sweetness that can be found in the magic of the garden, we will discover the innocence and purity that still resides in our hearts and the hearts of those who are dear to us. We will then get a true taste of paradise on earth.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to just make you laugh.
Go on,
So
then.
this is
We need a laugh.
just for a change, as if I don't do that already.
We definitely need a laugh, Annie.
One of the things that fairies and mermaids love to do is to raise our vibration with laughter and song. So this is a fairy tale that we should have been reading when we were little. Once upon a time, in a land far away, a beautiful, independent, self-assured princess happened upon a frog leaf as she sat there contemplating ecological issues on the shores of an unpolluted pond in a verdant meadow near her castle. I can see your face.
Carry on, carry on.
A frog hopped into the princess's lap and said, "Elegant lady, I was once a handsome prince until an evil witch cast a spell on me."
I'll have to try that line.
It doesn't all go the frog's way, I'll just tell you that. It
Oh,
doesn't quite go the way that the frog thought it was going to. "One kiss from you, beautiful lady, and I will turn back into the dapper young prince that I am. And then, my sweet, we can marry and set up housekeeping in your castle with my mother, where you can satisfy all my needs, prepare and serve my meals, clean my clothes, bear my children, and forever feel happy and grateful doing so."
We don't want much, does he?
That night, as the princess dined sumptuously on lightly sauteed frog's legs, seasoned in white wine and onion cream sauce, she chuckled and thought to herself, "I don't think so."
No, I wouldn't think so either.
But you know, one of the things that fairies do is They really help us to raise our vibration and not to take ourselves too seriously. And I know, because I've worked in some, what should we call them, challenging places, that if you lose your sense of humor, you're doomed, basically. So, you know, however dark the situation, try and find that little morsel of joyfulness, and just use your insane sense of humor to raise your vibration.
I reckon that frog doesn't get ate much.
She didn't
Well,
tell him
certainly.
to up off, did she? What are you croaking on about? I've got a story, if you'd like to hear it.
Go on, tell me.
We have fairies at the bottom of our garden. You've heard that before somewhere, haven't you?
Yes.
You've got fairies at the bottom of our garden. We every morning go down the garden in the early morning light, the dawn, and have a little chat with them. And then suddenly they went missing. There was no one there. No one there. And after about 6 months, I'm still looking for them, because obviously fairies are beautiful creatures. So I want to see them again. And there they were. I said, "Where have you been?" So, "Have you never heard of the National Health Service?"
Oh, Andrew.
I love it, Andrew. I love it.
It was a story that I heard as a child, but it was a story when the people telling it would have been in national service. So
Yeah. Perfect. And again, we're just showing that that's what fairy energy is all about: joyfulness and raising that vibration, isn't it? So thank you for that.
That's
I'm very
brilliant.
appreciative.
Yeah. And if you see the other side of them, you see the dark side of them, you're doing something wrong.
Oh, indeed.
You're attacking
Absolutely.
nature or doing something very, very wrong, because that's not the way they want to be.
No, exactly. So yeah. So fairies are said to be God's guardian angels of nature, and they ensure the health and safety of animals, plants, and Mother Earth. In that respect, they also play a significant role in helping and directing us humans. Fairies can also bring a sense of magic, joy, laughter, romance, and playfulness into our lives, which is exactly what we're describing, aren't we? So I thought I'd talk a little bit about mermaids.
Mermaids.
As they are also part of the elemental realm. They belong to the realm of water. So mermaids, again, appear in every country across the earth. All the illustrations and qualities ascribed to mermaids are very similar in every culture. And the Japanese, Chinese, in America and Australia, they talk in a very respectful way about mermaids, that they look after all the inhabitants of the sea and the coral. And despite some of the stories we may have heard in our culture, where they drag sailors down to the bottom of the sea, it seems to be more frequent that there are stories about, like the Little Mermaid, you know, that she rescues him and brings him up to the surface and puts him on the beach. So a lot of the research that I've done suggests otherwise, that mermaids are really positive creatures, and they actually rescue the sailors, not drag them to their death, which is just demonizing mermaids, basically. So the small village of Zenar, which is in Cornwall, has a medieval church between the West Cornwall moors and North Cornish coast, not far from St Ives. Now, I've actually been to this church, and they've got Saint Zenar, the mermaid, and it's got, at the end of the bench, it's got this beautiful, amazing carving of this mermaid, and it's said that she protects this part of the wild coast of Cornwall. She's depicted with long flowing hair, holding a mirror in one hand and a comb in the other. And she's the Mermaid of Zenor. And there is a church dedicated to her, which is quite unusual, an Anglican church. So the Mermaid of Zenor Zenor's church legend has it that many, many years ago, a richly dressed and beautiful lady occasionally attended the church at Zenor. Nobody knew who she was or where she came from, but her unusual red hair, it's the red hair again.
Yeah, red hair again,
mermaids. And her beauty and her beautiful singing voice made her the subject of much discussion. With such beauty, the lady had no shortage of would-be suitors in the village. One of these local men was Matthew Trewalla, a handsome young fellow with the best singing voice in the village. Mermaids are always said to be enjoying singing, and it's what they do as part of their everyday joyful energy, basically.
Well, we've got the whole story about the sirens, haven't we?
Yeah, and also we've been talking about sound healing. Why would not a mermaid? Mermaids are attracted to harps, and as you know, I've got a harp chair in my hallway here. No big surprises, because you know, mermaids really love the sound of the harp, and the mirror is about them making sure that they're only reflecting goodness into the sea and to other people. So with such beauty, this lady had no shortage of suitors. So Matthew Trewalla, a handsome young fellow with the best singing voice in the village, he took it upon himself to discover who this beautiful stranger was. After a service one Sunday, it said that the lady had smiled at Matthew Trewalla, so he decided to follow her as she made her way off towards the cliffs. He never returned to Zenor. Years passed and Matthew Trewalla's unexplained disappearance faded into the past. Then one Sunday morning, a ship cast anchor off Pendower Cove near Zenor. The vessel's captain was sitting on the deck when he heard a beautiful singing mermaid with long red hair flowing all around her. She asked him if he would be so kind as to raise his anchor as it was resting upon the doorway of her home.
Beautiful. Yeah.
She explained she was anxious to get back to her husband and her children, for it turns out that the beautiful stranger from the church was in fact one of the daughters of Lear, king of the ocean, and a mermaid by the name of Morveran. Ooh. According to this version of the tale, Morveran was drawn to the church by Matthew's beautiful singing voice, and she would dress as a human to listen at the back of church. Every night at evensong, the mermaid would come to hear him, until one night, as Matthew sang a particularly beautiful verse, Morveran let out a tiny sigh. Although it was as quiet as a whisper, Matthew stopped and turned. Morveran's eyes were shining, and the net had slipped from her head, and her hair was red, wet and gleaming, and it was love at first sight. Who could resist a wet, red-headed mermaid?
Who could resist, Annie?
The mermaid was frightened and made her way back to the sea with Matthew and a fair few of the townsfolk in pursuit. In her haste to get back to the sea, Morveran became tangled in her dress and tripped. Matthew now saw the tip of her mermaid tail poking out from beneath her dress. Because as soon as she got, this is what the story says at that church, that as soon as she got near to the salty air of the sea, then her mermaid tail came out and she couldn't sustain her legs anymore. She said, "I am so sorry, I cannot stay. I am a sea creature and I must go back to where I belong." But it didn't matter to him. Then I will go with you, he said, for wherever you are, that's where I belong. With that, Matthew picked up more verum, ran into the sea, never to be seen again by the folk of Zenor. However, that doesn't mean that they never heard of him again. Often people would say that they would hear him singing soft and high if the day was to be fair, deep and low if Lyra was going to make the seas rough. From his songs, the fishermen of Zena knew when it was safe to put to sea and when it was wise to anchor snug at home. What do you think of that?
I think it's a very beautiful story, Annie.
I do as well.
A man definitely wants to be with his woman, no matter what.
Yeah, wherever she is, you want to be there, don't you?
No
And the
matter
fact
what,
that this is,
no matter what, no matter where.
yeah, and the fact that I've been inside this church, it's got a really beautiful energy. It really has got an extraordinary energy. Lots of churches do, because they've been used for worship for so long, haven't they? But this one particularly, and that beautiful wooden carving of her, it is just extraordinary.
Yeah, until you're talking about churches, I know we're not really talking about that tonight, but just a little aside.
Yeah. It's all
There's
relevant.
a tiny little chapel in the middle of Thetford Forest in Norfolk.
Oh, okay.
And I wandered in there one day about, I don't know, 30 years ago, probably. And the only way I can describe it, it feels just like your garden.
Oh, perfect.
The energies there were absolutely off the scale.
I can believe it.
This little tiny chapel in the middle of Thetford Forest with no proper road going to it, just a little dirt track.
Oh.
And the energies, I was just blown away when I walked in.
Yeah.
I was there, I was working for the RSPB at the time. I was there doing species protection. And I just happened to come across this little church. I would never have found it otherwise. This little chapel.
How lovely.
Yeah.
But again, in the middle of nature, Jack. Now that's the secret, isn't it? The middle of nature.
Absolutely, yeah.
So I've got a few books that I'm going to recommend.
Okay.
So in the midst of doing my Master of Science degree, I was looking for books on sexual and spiritual healing because that's what my degree was in. But then the beautiful universe went, you've had enough of that stuff. You need to read this. So it gave me this link to this.
What's it say?
It's called The Faery Faith, an integration of science with spirit. Serena Roney-Dougal. I can probably find it again. It is still in print. I did check on Thursday.
We'll put a link to it below.
But this is what people have said about this book. This luminous book takes you on a journey of discovery to a place where two worlds meet. The world of Fae. Serena Roney-Dougal describes a scientific spirituality with its roots in the ancient path, but with profound implications for modern spiritual energies. Vivid, wide-ranging and provocative, The Faery Faith sheds a bright new light on the ancient mystery of humanity's relationship to the world of fairy. So yeah, I'd thoroughly recommend that. Brilliant. She goes into all sorts of details about the history of in Scotland, in Wales, in England and in Ireland, and then links it in with the sightings that there are and the sacred sites that are known to have profound fairy and elemental energies. So I'm definitely going to share that. This one is one of my favourite ones. It's Mermaids 101. And again, it's got loads of different mermaids from every culture. That one's Persian, Chinese, and then lots of tales about mermaids and
no pun intended.
Every pun intended, Jack. So I've told you about this, I think, sometime in the past, but I went to swim with Fungi in Dingle.
Fungi is the name of the dolphin that used to be in Dingle Harbour.
Yeah, that's
Well,
right. I think that he passed over
I
2
think
years
it's
ago.
gone now. Yeah.
Yeah. But he would come with his pod. No, he stayed with all the time in Dingle, but the rest of his pod would leave at the end of September.
Yeah.
And I'd gone there for my 50th birthday, and I was told that there was no trips to see fungi. So I cried and cried and cried outside the tourist information centre, as you do, and said, I don't believe that the mermaids have got me this far, and then I'm not going to be able to swim with dolphins. And with that, this lovely man came along. Again, it's Dingle, isn't it, where the magic is just extraordinary.
Gorgeous
and he
people,
said,
isn't
what
it?
are you crying for? And I said, because I wanted to swim with fungi. And he said, well, now stop crying, because I'm the captain of the boat. And I say who can go out and who can't. So we were in the middle of November, and apparently the season for swimming with fungi was September. So he said, we need to just find the lady who does wetsuits, because I'm not taking you out without a wetsuit. So, and then he went, now this is the worst Irish accent you've ever heard, I know that. So I'm saying straight away that that's the case. He went, well, now, you see that red estate car over there? That's the lady who hires the wetsuits out. So I was like, oh my gosh, that's brilliant, that's brilliant. So,
Bejeebus.
yeah. So, long story short, he said, ask her to look at get the right wetsuit for you, find out what the weather forecast is for tomorrow, and if it's calm enough, I'll take you out tomorrow. So and then he said, I told him what the weather was going to be like, and that I got my wetsuit. And then he went, I know you English like to have a lie-in, so I just need to tell you, lady, you need to be on time for this. And I was thinking, oh my gosh, this is going to be like 5 o'clock in the morning, in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. But you know what? I'm going to be swimming with the wild dolphins, so it'll be fine. And then I said, okay, so what time do you want me there? He said, no later than 10 o'clock. Like 10 o'clock. Oh, I can do 10 o'clock easy.
You can manage that, Annie. Even I can manage that. On a good day.
Yeah, I was just thinking when he was saying, I know what you English are like, and you know, you have to be there at this set time. I kind of got, it's going to be 5 o'clock in the morning, in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, and I'm just going to have to be okay with that. But no, 10 o'clock in the morning with beautiful, beautiful sunshine was what really happened. So that was really good. So I thought this might be quite useful as well. So I've known for a long, long time that I'm an incarnated Merpeople. But one of the books that I read within the last 10 years was Doreen Virtue's Realms of the Earth Angels. And it has a questionnaire in here asking you lots of questions about where you like to be, what makes your heart sing, you know, what things you really dislike and what things you really love. And then from that, you can figure out whether you're a star person or an earth angel or a wise one or an reincarnated sorceress, high priest, wizard, shaman, witch, whatever. So it goes through all of that. But I'd recommend that. It's not an expensive book, but it's really good for just finding out which category you belong to, so that you can honour what you really are.
Links to all the books in the description.
Yeah, I will do, Sweet Pea. And then this one, the lovely Ziggy and I, my lovely fairy friend, when we first met, he gifted me that with fairy spells in, and we've done loads of fairy spells for different things.
So tell us again what it's called.
It's called Fairy Spells by Claire Namad.
Okay.
How to see and communicate with fairies. And yeah, Ziggy had actually said, I've been looking for somebody to leave this with for a long time. And then he met me 7 years ago at an Earth Spirit camp ever since. So it's got some really amazing spells in here, just absolutely wonderful. And again, lots of illustrations of Japanese fairies, Pan, the king of the fairies, and Maid, Queen of the Fairies, and all sorts of different Merfairies and incarnated elementals as well. So that's a really good resource. And then last but not least, Lucy Cavendish, The Lost Lands.
Brilliant. Yep.
A magical history of Lemuria, Atlantis, and Avalon, where we've just been talking about.
We were talking about Atlantis a couple of weeks ago, 2 or 3 weeks ago, weren't we?
Yeah. And also the Isle of Avalon is said to be Glastonbury, isn't it?
It is.
So I'd thoroughly recommend that.
If you can imagine all that area, the Somerset levels,
Yeah.
when they were flooded before they were drained,
Yeah.
it absolutely was an island.
Yeah, absolutely. And you've only got to drink the Chalice-Well Garden water, you know, either the red one that's replete with iron, isn't it? And the white spring that is replete with calcium.
Yeah.
But you can really taste the difference. You can really feel the magic of it, can't you?
That I went to Chalice-Well, I don't know, a while ago now, a few months, years, feeling really, really down, really, really. I was that close to ending it. And just being there for a couple of hours and drinking the water, it completely changed my attitude, my whole demeanor.
Yeah.
The place is magic. It really is.
Oh, it's so is, Jack, isn't it?
That place saved my life.
Yeah.
Literally.
Well, I'm really glad it did.
Thank you.
No, I am really glad it saved your life, but I can fully appreciate and believe that that was the case, because that water is life-giving.
It is, yeah. But it's not just the water, it's the whole energies of the place.
Oh, it is. And it's the fact that that sacred water has always been part of the land.
Yeah.
So although I am able to absorb iron, my body isn't quite so clever at retaining it. So actually drinking and paddling, of course, in the water as well at the weekend was just amazing. It's always freezing cold, isn't it, Jack? Because there's so much trees over it. So yeah, my lovely friend was going, it's really cold. And I said, no, I did warn you that it's very cold, but it's also very healing as well. And, you know, anybody who's heard of Wim Hof will know that he recommends that we have our feet in cold water and we have our whole body immersed in cold water, because it stimulates our immune system.
Well,
it's not everybody's cup of tea, but it's mine.
He's a bit too extreme for me, I'm afraid.
Well, I can do probably 4 minutes now in a cold shower.
Yeah. But
I think a lot of that is down to, I've always been able to swim in the sea, in the Atlantic Ocean in November. And when I've gone to visit fungi since that first time, I've never worn a wetsuit because I actually hate being constricted and confined in a wetsuit. I just went in naked, and people going, he doesn't swim over there, he doesn't swim over there. And I was like, okay, well, that's where I'm swimming. And literally within minutes he was there. So, you know, I do know that dolphins are also elementals. The fact that they give us so much love. And I love it that they're always smiling as well. So I believe that dolphins belong to the mermaid or Merfairy kingdom.
Dolphins and otters, they're just beautiful, beautiful animals.
Aren't they?
A lot of fun and alive and happy.
And massively intelligent. Massively intelligent. And I just love the way they communicate as well. It is just incredible, isn't it? So, yeah, I don't know why we got onto dolphins. Well, yeah, dolphins are part of the elemental kingdom for sure. And we haven't really talked about fire sprites, but most of you will know that I really love I've got a little pot-bellied chimney that's nearly as tall as me. And quite often I'll get windfalls and big pine cones and put them on. And literally there'll be loads of fire sprites just coming out of it. And, you know, dragons, I believe, are also part of the elemental kingdom. Again, it's that element of fire. It's about passion, and all the stories about us killing dragons are not really what we're about. You know, that there are so many stories about dragons where we know that they looked after us and they were protectors. So there's a lot more stories about dragons being protectors, particularly in Japanese and Chinese culture, as well as, you know, the Welsh flag.
Yeah, I don't want to knock anybody's religion, so I apologize in advance. But most of the stories from Europe, from Britain and Europe, are about the Christians killing the dragons.
Yeah. Because
they were trying to suppress the ancient knowledge.
Yeah. And it's linked to ley lines, goddess energy. So actually, those that honor dragons, you know, tend to do well, don't they, basically?
Yeah.
So, I don't know what else to tell you now. I think that was it.
Well, I just want to say,
visit St. Sonara's Church in Zenor in St. Ives, because it's definitely worth a look at, basically. And it's surrounded by beautiful natural surrounding. But I love that really romantic story about mermaids falling in love.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
All we need is love.
Da, 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 we all just get it in, haven't we? Every time, every show. Da, 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 da.
It wouldn't be us if we didn't sneak that in somewhere into the recording, really, would it?
The answer to every problem is love.
Indeed.
That's why I call my book Love, Not Fear. Love conquers fear.
Yeah, absolutely.
They're absolute opposites. Hatred isn't the opposite of love. Fear is.
Yeah.
Hatred is just a byproduct of fear.
Absolutely, darling. And I think that's one of the things that fairies and elementals help us to keep light and cheerful and happy and keep our very high vibration, because they don't take themselves too seriously and they find opportunities to laugh and sing, and all you need is love.
Da, 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 da,
da. Oops.
I just want to say, for any skeptics out there, not that any skeptics will still be on, they'll have gone off an hour ago.
Oh, yeah.
I just want to say, for the record, anybody who says there's no such thing as fairies because I can't see them, our five senses only detect about 0.05% of what's out there, if that.
Yeah.
Our five senses are very, very limited.
Yeah.
If you limit what you understand to what you can detect with your five senses, you're not going to understand anything.
No.
The universe is so much, the multiverse is so much broader than that.
Oh, absolutely, darling.
We can see the tiniest little bit of the electromagnetic spectrum.
Yeah.
And our ears pick up the tiny little bit of the sound spectrum.
Yeah.
And this whole universe is beyond what we can see and feel and touch.
Oh, absolutely, without a doubt.
Here's another.
What? I don't know what that was.
Here's another elemental for you, the wind. Here's another elemental. Connection's unstable, sorry.
You're cracking up, Andy.
Here's another elemental. Am I not coming back to you?
We're not interrupting you, just a beautiful addition. Talking about fairies.
Hello.
I was quite enjoying the conversation.
Good.
Inside the room.
Come on in.
Let's try
Come and
again.
join the show.
My lovely friend Diona, who is also a mermaid.
I am.
Hello,
And another mermaid.
We love mermaids on this show.
Here's another elemental for you. Here's another elemental for you, the wind. You can't see the wind, but you can see the effect that the wind has on the trees.
Andrew.
Yeah. So maybe you shouldn't be, you know, if you're someone who is not really into all this kind of stuff, maybe you should be looking for the effect of the elementals rather than just, well, I can't see the wind. Who else has seen the wind? But there is a direct, you can see what the wind is doing. So maybe that's what you should be looking for first. Then maybe you'll see the other elementals. Yeah.
And I know, and you probably know the same, Andrew, as well as Jack, that, you know, it's in every culture, they say that people go away with the fairies, and there are big lapses of time when you don't know what you were doing. And certainly when we went to Chaliswell Gardens, we got there at probably 11 o'clock and suddenly it was 4 o'clock. And I know that it was literally because we'd gone away with the fairies. Because if you asked me what I was doing all that time, I can't really tell you.
Last time I was there, I just fell asleep in the sun.
Did you? Such a peaceful garden, isn't it?
I just crashed out. And I was there, I don't know how long I was there. I was just out of it. And I was getting downloads or something. I don't know, but it was beautiful.
I think it was the fairies.
And when I woke up, there were two women sitting right next to me.
A good bit of manifesting.
One of them has been on my Friday show.
Oh, right. Wow. Even more synchronistic, Jack.
Synchronistic, yeah.
Yeah, fairies are very good at helping us to manifest our dreams into reality. Again, because they're so light and... But yeah, we all need to go off with the fairies occasionally and go away with the fairies and just have that time of reflection and just groundedness where we're not really doing anything.
Well,
Self-accepting.
thank you. It's been another brilliant show.
Thank you, Jack, for inviting me.
Thank you, Andrew, for coming along and contributing. Thank you. Is it Iona? Is that...
Yeah.
Thank you for coming on at the end and being
It's
part
nice
of
to
it
meet
too.
you.
As you all know, this will go up onto YouTube in about 2 or 3 hours' time.
Thank you.
With all the links in the description.
Yeah.
I don't think we've decided what we're talking about next week, have we? You got any ideas?
Oh, have I got any ideas?
Well, we'll think about something between now and next week.
Diane is going to inspire me tonight.
Anybody who's watching or watches the replay later, if there's anything you want us to cover, please just send me a message or put a comment below, and we'll see if we can cover it.
Cool.
Before you sent the notification out tonight that we're going to be looking at fairy folk, I thought we'd said last week you were going to talk about David Icke's book.
Oh, no, I did that last week.
Did I miss you? Oh, that was Friday.
That was my Friday show last week.
I need to go and have a look at that. Then.
But I'll send you the link to that, Andrew.
Thank you.
I'll send you the link to that.
It was much better that you were part of the fairy folk, Andrew.
So,
and I loved your jokes.
They can be really bad at times, but it's just to lift the energy, because the world is so, there's so much going on, isn't there, that drags people down, that they engage with, and that they're feeling really sad. You could, I was saying to a colleague of mine at work, said, I'm 64, I'm 65 in November, and I have never known a time like this. I thought the banking crash was bad enough in 2008. And I went onto Facebook to try and raise the vibration with my little inspirational stuff. And I really have never lived, and I'm sure that people who lived through the Second World War would say, you don't know the half, mate. But for me, in my life, I've never known such a dark time. And we need laughter, and we need smiles, and we need high energy.
We do.
And you two guys, you bring it every single week. It's amazing what you're doing here. Thank you.
Well, I really want to thank Annie, because this show has lifted onto a whole different level since she's been my
Aw.
co-host.
Oh, she's an inspiration.
I've been doing
Oh,
this show
thank
now for
you.
well over a year, and I was doing it with another friend of mine, a chap, and we were getting into a little bit of a rut, to be honest. And then Annie came in and lifted the whole thing and onto a completely different plane. So I really, really, really mean it when I say thank you, Annie.
No.
Oh, thank you, sweet pea.
Well, obviously, I've not known Annie as long as you have, Jack, but they're just a joyfulness, a lightness, a beauty, you know, just an effervescence going off there that really, you know, it's better than any Alka-Seltzer I've had.
It lifts you up. She's amazing.
I also do a show on Fridays, not every single Friday, it depends whether I've got a guest, but it's called Co-Creating the New Earth Together, and it's a chance for anybody who's doing anything interesting to come on and be featured on it.
Yeah.
So anybody who's watching, anyone who's watching the replay or whatever, get in touch with me if you want to be on that show.
Cool.
I made a promise back in I think it was late June that I had a book that I've been working on it for over 2 years now, and it's just called Love, and it's just a gathering together of poetry that I've written and articles that I've written, thoughts like memes that I've created, and I've got an ISBN number now.
Yay, well done, Andrew.
So it's getting closer. I said by the end of July, but it will be there eventually, and I'd love to be able to talk about it, obviously, once it's there.
Oh, do it, Andrew.
Released. Yeah.
Do it,
okay.
do it.
As soon as it's ready, Andrew, as soon as it's finished, come on the Friday show.
Yes.
And we'll have an in-depth interview about it. Yeah.
I've also, I don't know which book I mentioned, but the Love book's been there for 2 years, but as a Word document, but not actually published. So it's just the intricacies of getting it out there on, it's like a Kindle book, but they will actually publish it. You can buy one copy from Amazon, and then you can send the link, and people buy it, and you get they take 40%. But it's a proper book, you know, physical book. But I'm also
mine.
Yes. Well, I don't know where you got yours published from, but and I have been working more recently, because once I got that together, I thought, well, what else could I do? And I've written a poem for every verse of the Tao Te Ching. So that's the next one, Reflections on the Tao. So I'm looking forward to bringing that out. But as you rightly pointed out a few moments ago, all you need is love. It's the advert for my book.
So please do like, share, and subscribe to the channel. And we'll see you all again next week.
Okay, lovely Jack. Have a lovely night. Thank you to all the people who will watch this in the future. Thank you to the lovely Iona, the lovely Andrew, the lovely Jack, and anybody else who's going to be watching it. But thank you very much from all the Mer Fairies and Elementals.
Thank you, lovely Annie, lovely Iona.
See ya.
See you soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Andrew. Namaste.
Is that it? Oh no, that's it.